Commander Veltar stood before the massive holographic display showing Earth's blue and green surface. His 4 eyes studied the data streams flowing across the screen. 3 years had passed since first contact with the humans, and the intelligence reports painted a clear picture. These creatures were making themselves weaker every day. "Look at this," Veltar said to his aide, pointing at the latest military assessment. "The humans are removing their most experienced warriors from active duty. They call it retirement." High Admiral Kexavon entered the command chamber, his silver scales catching the blue light from the displays. He was the leader of the Zephyrian invasion fleet, and today would be the day they finalized their plans for Earth. "Show me what you have discovered," Kexavon commanded. Veltar activated a series of reports. Images of human military bases appeared on the screen. "Our spy drones have been watching their facilities for months. Every week they take their oldest and most skilled fighters and remove them from service. They give them small ceremonies and send them away." The Admiral's eyes narrowed as he studied the data. "Where do they send these warriors?" "To small houses in quiet places," Veltar replied. "Some go to mountains, others go to farms or small towns. They live peaceful lives far from any military base. Our analysis shows they fish, garden, and spend time with their families. They appear completely harmless." Kexavon walked closer to the display. He watched recorded footage of a human military ceremony. Soldiers in dress uniforms stood at attention while an older human in decorated clothes received a folded flag. The crowd clapped as the old soldier walked away from the base for the last time. "This is their Colonel Jake Morrison," Veltar explained. 20 years of combat experience, expert in ground warfare and special operations. Last month they retired him. He now lives in a cabin in the mountains of Montana. He spends his days fishing and chopping wood. Another image appeared. Commander Lisa Park, naval officer with expertise in tactical warfare and submarine operations. The humans retired her 6 months ago. She now lives in Oregon and paints pictures of flowers. The Admiral studied more files. General Frank Stone, a strategic planning expert, now lived quietly with his grandchildren. Major Tony Martinez had opened a small bakery. Captain Amy Chen worked as a school teacher. The pattern was clear and consistent. In the past year alone, Veltar continued, the humans have retired over 2,000 of their most experienced military personnel. They replaced them with young, inexperienced soldiers who have never seen real combat. Kexavon's confidence grew as he reviewed the intelligence. "This confirms our assessment of human psychology. They are a soft species that values age and comfort over military strength. They remove their best fighters because they believe old warriors deserve rest." The Zephyrian military had spent months studying human behavior. They knew humans formed emotional attachments to their elderly. They cared for sick family members instead of letting them die. They built special homes for old people who could no longer work. It made perfect sense that they would also put their old soldiers out to pasture. "What about their active military forces?" the Admiral asked. "Weakening every day," Veltar reported. "Their current commanders are young and follow strict rules. They have something called rules of engagement that limit how they can fight. They must avoid civilian casualties. They cannot attack enemies who surrender. They need permission from political leaders before taking major action." The Admiral's satisfaction was visible. "So they handicap their young warriors with rules and they send away their experienced ones. These humans have made themselves defenseless." On the display, more intelligence flowed past. Earth's military budget focused on defensive systems. Their weapons were designed to minimize collateral damage. Their soldiers trained to protect civilians first, complete missions second. Everything about human military doctrine seemed designed to make warfare more difficult for themselves. "There is more, Admiral," Veltar said. "Our sources indicate that many retired humans struggle with their new civilian lives. They suffer from what humans call depression and anxiety. Some have difficulty sleeping, others drink too much alcohol. The transition from military to civilian life appears to damage them psychologically." This information pleased Kexavon greatly. Not only were the humans removing their best fighters, but those fighters were becoming mentally weak in retirement. "Perfect. When we attack, These broken old soldiers will be no threat to us. The invasion plan took shape over the following days. Phase 1 would target Earth's outer colonies and lunar bases. The inexperienced human commanders would be overwhelmed by superior Zephyrian technology. Phase 2 would demand Earth's surrender, threatening to destroy major cities if they refused. Phase 3 would involve occupation and the establishment of Zephyrian rule. Our victory is assured, Kexavon told his war council. The humans have literally removed their most dangerous individuals from the battlefield. Their active military follows rules that make them predictable and weak. We will face children led by children while their veterans tend gardens and feel sorry for themselves. Intelligence officer next to him raised a concern. Admiral, some of our analysts wonder why the humans would weaken themselves this way. Could retirement serve another purpose we do not understand? Kexavon dismissed the worry with a wave of his hand. We have observed hundreds of species across the galaxy. Military retirement always means the same thing. Removing old warriors from service because they are no longer useful. Humans are not special. They are just more sentimental than most. The final intelligence briefing took place 1 week before the invasion. Veltar presented updated information on Earth's defenses. Current human military strength stands at its lowest point in decades. Most experienced personnel have been retired. Remaining forces are scattered across multiple planets and space stations. They show no signs of suspecting our approach. Admiral, Kexavon studied the tactical displays one last time. Earth hung before him like a ripe fruit ready for picking. The third planet from its yellow star held 4 billion humans, vast resources and strategic value for controlling this section of the galaxy. Soon it would all belong to the Zephyrian coalition. Begin final preparations, he ordered. In 72 hours we strike. The humans have done half our work for us by removing their veteran warriors. This will be the easiest conquest in Zephyrian history. As the command staff dispersed to ready their ships, none of them noticed a small detail in the intelligence reports. The retired human veterans maintained contact with each other through something called social networks. They gathered regularly for events they called reunions, and despite their supposed mental weakness, they kept themselves in excellent physical condition. But these details seemed unimportant to the Zephyrians. After all, what could old retired soldiers possibly do against a modern invasion fleet? The humans had made their choice to prioritize sentiment over strength. Soon they would learn the cost of that decision. The invasion fleet began moving toward Earth, confident in their understanding of human military culture. They were about to discover just how wrong they were. The first explosions lit up the darkness around Europa Station like deadly fireworks. Captain Ryan Hayes watched through the command center windows as Zephyrian attack ships tore through Earth's outer defenses. Their weapons cut through human shields like knives through paper. All stations report heavy damage, his communications officer called out. Titan Base has gone silent. Luna City is under direct assault. Ryan gripped the edge of his control console. He was 32 years old and had never seen real combat before today. The enemy ships moved with precision that spoke of centuries of warfare experience. Their technology was beyond anything humanity possessed. Sir, incoming transmission from the enemy fleet, the communications officer announced. The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Kexavon's scaled face. His 4 eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he spoke. Human defenders, you have fought bravely, but uselessly. Our analysis of your military capabilities shows you cannot win this conflict. We demand your immediate surrender. Ryan found his voice despite the fear clawing at his throat. This is Captain Hayes of Earth Defense Command. We will not surrender to alien invaders. Kexavon's expression showed something that might have been amusement. Captain Hayes, we have studied your species for 3 years. We know you have removed your most experienced warriors from active duty. Your current forces consist of young soldiers with no real combat experience. You face the Zephyrian coalition fleet with children. The transmission ended, leaving Ryan staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew worked frantically to coordinate Earth's defenses. But the reports coming in painted a grim picture. Human forces were being overwhelmed at every engagement point. Major Kate Williams burst into the command center, her uniform torn and dusty from helping with evacuations. "Sir, we've lost contact with the Mars colonies. The enemy is jamming most communications. Civilian casualties are mounting." Ryan turned to face her. Kate was one of the few officers under his command with any real experience, but even she had never faced anything like this. "What's the status of our reserve forces?" "Scattered across 3 planets and 12 space stations," Kate replied. "Even if we could coordinate them properly, our weapons barely scratch their hull armor. Sir, we need help." Across the solar system, the same scene played out repeatedly. Human defenders fought with courage, but lacked the experience and equipment to stand against Zephyrian technology. At Luna City, young Lieutenant Bobby Torres watched his defensive batteries explode under alien fire. On Ceres Station, Commander Sarah Park tried to organize an evacuation while enemy fighters strafed the civilian quarters. Director Sam Powell sat in his underground command bunker on Earth, watching red indicators spread across his tactical displays. Each red light represented a human position under attack or already destroyed. His staff worked around him, but everyone knew the truth. Earth's regular military forces were losing badly. "Sir," his aide called out, "we're receiving surrender demands from 17 different enemy commanders. They're offering to spare civilian populations if we capitulate immediately." Sam stared at the screen showing burning space stations and fleeing civilian ships. He was 60 years old and had spent his entire career preparing for this moment. But all their plans had assumed Earth would face an enemy of roughly equal technology. The Zephyrians were decades ahead of human military development. "Sir, what are your orders?" the aide pressed. Sam thought about his options. He could surrender and hope the aliens kept their word about sparing civilians. He could order a desperate last stand that would likely end in total defeat. Or he could try something that had never been tested, something that existed only in classified files that most people would never see. "Activate Protocol 7, he said quietly. His aide looked confused. "Sir, I'm not familiar with that protocol." "It's classified above your level," Sam replied. "Just do it." The aide's hands moved across his console, inputting codes that Sam provided. Deep in the bunker's communications center, automated systems came online. Encrypted messages began broadcasting across Earth on frequencies that seemed abandoned. The messages were short, identical, and sent to thousands of specific addresses. Meanwhile, Jake Morrison sat on his porch in Montana, watching the evening news with growing anger. The reporter stood in front of burning buildings while explosions lit the sky behind her. Casualty reports continue to rise as alien forces overwhelm Earth's outer defenses. Military analysts say our young commanders are doing their best, but they lack experience fighting an enemy of this sophistication. Jake's weathered hands tightened into fists. On the screen, he watched young soldiers barely out of training trying to coordinate defenses against an enemy that had been fighting wars since before humans discovered fire. It was like watching children try to fight adult predators. His secure phone buzzed. Jake looked at the display and saw a message he had not expected to receive for years, if ever. 4 simple words that changed everything. The farm is burning. In Oregon, Lisa Park was cleaning paintbrushes in her art studio when her phone rang. She glanced at the message and set down her brushes very carefully. Her hands were steady, but something had changed in her eyes. The peaceful expression she had worn for months disappeared, replaced by something cold and calculating. Frank Stone was reading bedtime stories to his grandchildren when his phone buzzed. He finished the story, tucked the children into bed, and kissed them goodnight. Then he walked to his basement and opened a locked cabinet that his family had never seen inside. Across Earth, similar scenes played out in small towns and quiet neighborhoods. Retired soldiers received the same message and responded in ways their civilian neighbors would never have imagined possible. Tony Martinez closed his bakery early and drove to a storage unit across town. Amy Chen called in sick to her teaching job and began making phone calls to numbers she had memorized but never used. On the news, Admiral Kexavon appeared again, speaking to Earth's population directly. "Humans of Earth, your military leaders refuse to accept reality. We have destroyed your outer defenses. Your space-based forces are scattered and weak. Your remaining ships cannot challenge our fleet." The alien commander gestured to displays showing the tactical situation. "We offer you one final opportunity for surrender. We know your military doctrine. You have retired your experienced warriors and replaced them with young soldiers who follow restrictive rules of engagement. Your current forces cannot win this war." Kexavon's image leaned forward. "We will give you 24 hours to consider our terms. After that, we will begin targeting your major cities. Your choice is simple. Surrender now and live under Zephyrian rule, or watch your world burn while your retired warriors tend their gardens." The transmission ended, leaving Earth's population to contemplate their fate. In government bunkers, young military officers tried to plan desperate defenses with inadequate resources. In civilian shelters, families huddled together and hoped for rescue that seemed impossible. But in small towns and quiet neighborhoods, something else was happening. Jake Morrison loaded equipment into his truck that looked nothing like fishing gear. Lisa Park made contact with people she had not spoken to in years. Frank Stone studied star charts and tactical data that civilian databases did not contain. The message had been sent. The farm was burning. And across Earth, the galaxy's most dangerous predators were waking up from their peaceful retirement. The Zephyrians were about to learn the difference between removing warriors from duty and removing the restrictions that kept them civilized. Jake Morrison set down his fishing rod with careful precision. The coffee mug beside him still steamed in the morning air, but he no longer saw the peaceful lake or heard the birds singing in the pine trees. His mind was already miles away, calculating distances and supply routes. He walked back to his cabin with steps that carried a different rhythm than they had for the past year. His neighbors, if they had been watching, might have noticed that the relaxed shuffle of retirement had been replaced by something sharper and more purposeful. Inside the cabin, Jake opened the door to his basement. The steps creaked as he descended into darkness. Most people kept old furniture and holiday decorations in their basements. Jake kept something else entirely. The basement looked ordinary at first glance. Shelves lined the walls, holding paint cans, tools, and boxes marked with innocent labels like Christmas lights and winter clothes. But Jake knew which boxes actually contained ammunition, which paint cans held explosives, and which tool chest was filled with weapons that no civilian should possess. He opened his laptop and typed in a password that was longer than most people's names. The screen displayed a map of North America with small red dots scattered across it. Each dot represented a person like him. Each dot was starting to move. 3 states away in Oregon, Lisa Park stood in her art studio, looking at a half-finished painting of sunflowers. She had enjoyed painting these past months. The colors and peaceful subjects had helped quiet the memories that sometimes woke her at night. But now those memories were exactly what she needed. She walked to her closet and pushed aside the dresses and casual clothes she had grown comfortable wearing. Behind them, sealed in waterproof containers, were items from her previous life. Combat boots that still fit perfectly. Tactical gear that looked ordinary but had been modified in ways that standard military equipment never was. Lisa's fingers moved across her phone screen, sending messages to numbers she had memorized but hoped never to use. The replies came back, quickly. Everyone had received the same message. Everyone understood what it meant. Frank Stone finished reading the bedtime story to his 6-year-old granddaughter, Emma. She smiled sleepily as he tucked the blankets around her small shoulders. "Grandpa, will you read another story tomorrow?" she asked. Frank kissed her forehead gently. "Of course, sweetheart. Grandpa will always come back to read you stories." He meant it, but first he had work to do. In his study, Frank opened files that contained information no retired general should have access to. Satellite images updated hourly, communication intercepts from alien transmissions, technical analysis of Zephyrian weapons and ship designs. Someone had been keeping him informed even in retirement. Someone had known this day might come. Across the country in Texas, Tony Martinez flipped the sign on his bakery from open to closed. His regular customers would be disappointed, but they would understand if they knew what was happening in space above their heads. Tony had built a good life making bread and pastries, but his hands remembered other skills. He drove across town to a storage facility that he rented under a different name. Unit 47 contained baking supplies according to the rental agreement. The reality was more complicated. Tony opened boxes that held items he had collected over the years, things that most people could not legally own and would not know how to use if they could. Amy Chen stood at the front of her fourth-grade classroom looking at 28 young faces staring back at her. For 8 months she had loved teaching these children. They reminded her that the world contained innocence and hope worth protecting. "Class, I need to leave early today," she said calmly. "Mrs. Johnson will finish our math lesson. I want you all to remember that grown-ups sometimes have to do difficult things to keep children safe." One student raised her hand. "Are you okay, Miss Chen? You look different." Amy smiled, but it was not the same warm expression her students were used to seeing. "I'm fine, Sarah. I just remembered something I need to take care of." In Colorado, Rick Johnson locked the gate to the national park where he worked as a ranger. Visitors would have to find other trails to hike today. Rick had different terrain to navigate. He drove his Park Service truck up a mountain road that was not marked on any tourist map. The cabin at the end of the road looked abandoned, but Rick knew better. Inside, he found equipment that had been waiting for him. Weapons that could drop, a man at impossible distances, communication gear that could reach anywhere in the world, supplies that could keep him alive for weeks in terrain that would kill most people. Commander Veltar watched his displays with growing confusion. The Zephyrian spy satellites had been tracking Earth's population for months, creating detailed maps of human movement patterns, but something was changing. "Admiral," he called to Kexvan, "we're detecting unusual activity across Earth's North American continent." Kexvan approached the displays. "Show me." Veltar highlighted thousands of small movements across the map. "Individual humans are leaving their homes and traveling to locations that are not in our databases. The movement pattern is coordinated, but we cannot determine the purpose." "Are they evacuating?" the Admiral asked. "No, sir. Evacuation would involve families moving together toward designated safe areas. This is different. Single individuals are moving toward remote locations. Many are traveling at night. They appear to be avoiding main roads and population centers." Kexvan studied the data. "What is our assessment of these individuals?" Veltar pulled up personnel files. "Cross-referencing with our intelligence data shows that many of them are the retired military personnel we identified earlier. Jake Morrison left his cabin 12 hours ago. Lisa Park abandoned her art studio. Frank Stone told his family he was visiting an old friend." The Admiral's confidence wavered slightly. "Why would retired soldiers be moving now? They should be cowering in their homes like other civilians." "Unknown, sir. Our analysis suggested these individuals had been psychologically damaged by retirement. Their behavior does not match our projections." Back on Earth, Jake Morrison's truck rumbled down a mountain road toward a destination that existed on no official map. His phone buzzed with messages from people he had not spoken to in months but whose voices he would recognize in the darkness. The rally point was an abandoned mining facility in Nevada. Jake had never been there before, but he knew others like it existed across the country. Hidden places where certain supplies had been stored against a day that everyone hoped would never come. Lisa Park's van approached the same location from a different direction. She had driven for 18 hours, straight, stopping only for fuel. The peaceful woman who painted flowers no longer existed. What remained was someone who had once disappeared into enemy territory for weeks at a time and always came home. Frank Stone arrived at the facility in a helicopter that appeared on no flight plans. Amy Chen came in a small plane that she had borrowed from a private airfield. Rick Johnson emerged from the desert on foot, carrying everything he needed on his back. They gathered in the main building as the sun set behind distant mountains. Jake looked around at faces he had not seen since their retirement ceremonies. Everyone looked older than they had in their uniforms, but something else had changed too. The careful restraint they had worn like invisible chains was gone. "I assume everyone got the message," Jake said. Lisa nodded. The farm is burning. How bad is it? Frank activated a portable communication system and connected to Director Powell's emergency network. The tactical display showed the real situation in space. Earth's regular forces were being destroyed systematically. Young commanders were making brave but futile stands against impossible odds. Our kids are dying up there, Tony said quietly. They're fighting an enemy they were never trained to face. Amy studied the alien ship configurations. These Zephyrians fight like they've been doing it for centuries. Our active duty people don't have the experience or the flexibility to adapt. Rick examined the enemy force assessment. But we do. Jake looked around the room at people who had once been the most dangerous humans alive. They had been retired, not because they were worn out, but because peacetime military service required restraint that did not come naturally to them. Rules of engagement, concern for collateral damage, political considerations that limited tactical options. Anyone who wants to walk away can do it now, he said. Once we go active, there's no going back to the quiet life. Nobody moved toward the door. Frank pulled up classified files that showed hidden supply caches across the solar system. The question is not whether we can fight. The question is whether we can get to where the fighting is. Lisa smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. That won't be a problem. I know some people who owe me favors. Above them, alien ships continued their systematic destruction of Earth's defenses, confident that they faced only inexperienced children following rules that made them predictable and weak. They had no idea that Earth's most dangerous predators were no longer bound by those rules and were now hunting them. Director Sam Powell stood in the secure briefing room deep beneath Washington, D.C. Around the table sat 20 people who officially did not exist. They had no ranks, no uniforms, and no names in any military database. But every one of them had once been considered too dangerous for conventional military service. The situation is simple, Sam began, activating the holographic display. Our regular forces are losing. The enemy has superior technology and centuries of experience. Our young commanders are brave, but they lack the skills to fight this kind of war. Jake Morrison leaned back in his chair. So you want us to do what the regular military cannot? No, Sam replied. I want you to do what the regular military is not allowed to do. The distinction was important. Everyone in the room understood the difference between capability and permission. For years, they had operated under rules that limited their methods, protected enemy combatants, and prioritized civilian safety above mission success. Those rules had been created by politicians who never faced an enemy that wanted to exterminate humanity. Lisa Park studied the tactical displays. What exactly are you authorizing? Sam's expression was grim. Everything. No rules of engagement, no political oversight, no concern for international law or treaty obligations. You have complete operational freedom to end this invasion by any means necessary. Frank Stone whistled softly. That's a dangerous precedent, Director. The precedent was set when aliens started killing our children, Sam replied. The Geneva Convention does not apply to species trying to commit genocide. Neither do any other restrictions we have placed on ourselves. Tony Martinez spoke up from the back of the room. What about collateral damage? Civilian casualties? Minimize them when possible, Sam said. But mission success takes priority. If you have to choose between saving human lives and following rules designed for wars between human nations, you save human lives. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed what they were being told. For their entire military careers, they had operated under constraints designed to keep warfare civilized. Rules that prevented torture, protected prisoners, and limited the use of certain weapons. Those rules would no longer apply. Amy Chen raised her hand. Command structure. You report directly to me, Sam answered. No other authority, no oversight committees, no congressional briefings. You are officially designated as Special Task Force Omega, but that classification is so deep that only 12 people in the government know it exists. Rick Johnson leaned forward. Resources? Unlimited. Every Black Project budget for the past 20 years is now available to you. Weapons that were deemed too dangerous for conventional forces. technology that was considered too risky for standard deployment, equipment that exists only in classified files. Sam activated another display showing supply caches hidden across the solar system. These locations contain materials that regular military personnel are not authorized to use. Weapons designed to cause maximum psychological impact. Surveillance equipment that violates every privacy law on Earth. Interrogation tools that the UN would classify as torture devices. Jake looked around the room at his former colleagues. How many teams are we talking about? 50 primary units, each with 4 to 6 operators, Sam replied, plus support personnel who understand the new operational parameters. Total deployment of approximately 400 personnel who have been retired from conventional service. The implications were staggering. Earth was unleashing its most dangerous individuals and removing every restriction that had kept them controllable. It was a desperate measure that could not be undone once initiated. Danny Clark, a former explosive specialist who now worked as a mechanic, spoke for the first time. "Director, what happens after we win?" Sam's pause was telling. "That depends on how you define winning and what methods you use to achieve it." The unspoken truth hung in the air. Some things, once done, would change humanity forever. The galaxy would learn what humans were capable of when pushed to the edge of extinction. That knowledge could never be erased. Nicole Banks, who had been one of the military's best intelligence officers before retirement, asked the critical question, what about oversight? Who makes sure we do not become the monsters we are hunting? You do, Sam replied simply. I am giving you the tools to save our species. How you use them is up to you. But remember that your families, your children, and your grandchildren will inherit whatever galaxy you create. Frank activated his tablet and began studying the operational parameters. Deployment timeline? Immediate. The first strikes happen within 48 hours. The enemy believes they are fighting children with rules. They need to learn the truth before they advance toward Earth itself. Lisa examined the intelligence files on Zephyrian command structure. Primary targets? Disrupt their command and control. Create fear and confusion. Make them doubt their intelligence about human capabilities. Show them that they are not fighting the military they studied, but something entirely different. The meeting lasted 6 more hours. Plans were made that would never appear in any official record. Resources were allocated for operations that would be denied if discovered. 50 teams of Earth's most dangerous retirees prepared to become something the galaxy had never seen before. Commander Veltar received the first reports 12 hours later. 3 Zephyrian scouts had disappeared near Jupiter's moon Europa. Their last transmissions indicated everything was normal, then simply stopped. Search teams found debris but no bodies. Mechanical failure? Admiral Kexavon asked. Unknown, sir. The debris pattern suggests an attack, but our sensors detected no enemy vessels in the area. 6 hours after that, a Zephyrian supply convoy vanished between Mars and the asteroid belt. This time there were brief combat transmissions before silence. The messages spoke of attackers who appeared from nowhere, struck with impossible precision, and disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. These cannot be the same human forces we have been monitoring, Veltar reported. The tactical sophistication is completely different from what we observed in their regular military engagements. Kexavon studied the attack patterns. Perhaps they have allies we did not detect, but the evidence suggested otherwise. When they finally recovered one damaged recorder from a destroyed ship, the final images showed human attackers, not the young uniformed soldiers they had been fighting, but older individuals in mismatched equipment who moved with deadly efficiency. Jake Morrison floated in the darkness between 2 asteroids, watching a Zephyrian patrol through his scope. His team had been tracking this group for 18 hours, learning their patterns and identifying weaknesses. The enemy's ships were powerful, but their crews followed predictable procedures designed for conventional warfare. He activated his communication system. Echo 1 to all units, target acquired, beginning approach. Lisa Park's submarine drifted silently through Europa's subsurface ocean, using the moon's ice shell to mask her approach to the Zephyrian mining operation. Her crew consisted of people who had been deemed too aggressive for regular naval service. Now that aggression was exactly what humanity needed. Tony Martinez examined the alien installation through his binoculars. The Zephyrians had established a forward supply base on Ceres, apparently believing that retired human forces posed no threat to their logistics chain. They were about to learn how wrong that assumption was. Across the solar system, 50 teams of retired military personnel began operations that would have been impossible under normal rules of engagement. They used weapons that regular forces were prohibited from deploying. They employed tactics that military lawyers would have classified as war crimes. They struck without warning, showed no mercy, and disappeared like ghosts. The Zephyrians had studied human military doctrine for 3 years. They understood human rules of engagement, tactical procedures, and command structures. But they had never encountered humans who operated without rules, who answered to no authority except necessity, and who had been given permission to do whatever was required to protect their species. The galaxy was about to learn the difference between human military capability and human military restraint, and that lesson would be written in alien blood across the darkness between worlds. Jake Morrison pressed himself against the cold metal wall of the Zephyrian command ship, listening to the alien voices echoing through the corridor. 3 days ago, he had been a retired Marine living quietly in Montana. Now he was inside an enemy vessel that should have been impossible to breach, carrying weapons that officially did not exist. His team had infiltrated the ship by hiding inside a captured supply pod. The Zephyrians never suspected that their own cargo could contain human attackers. Their security focused on external threats, not enemies already inside their defenses. Jake checked his watch. In exactly 4 minutes, Lisa Park would begin her assault on the ship's underwater mining facility. The timing had to be perfect. The enemy needed to believe they were facing multiple threats simultaneously, not a coordinated attack by people who had been planning operations like this for decades. 2 corridors away, Zephyrian Commander Veltar studied tactical displays that made no sense. His forces were being attacked by enemies who appeared from nowhere, struck with impossible precision and vanished before anyone could respond. In the past week, they had lost 12 ships, 4 supply convoys, and an entire forward base. "Sir," his aide called urgently, "we have another attack. Mining Station 7 on Europa is under assault." Veltar rushed to the communications center. The video feed showed chaos inside the underwater facility. Explosions rocked the structure while human figures moved through the smoke like deadly shadows. The attackers wore no uniforms and carried weapons that his intelligence officers could not identify. "How many hostiles?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir. Our sensors show only 6 human life signs, but the damage suggests a much larger force." Veltar watched in horror as 6 humans systematically destroyed a facility defended by 40 Zephyrian soldiers. These were not the young, rule-following troops his forces had been easily defeating. These attackers moved with the confidence of apex predators who had done this many times before. Lisa Park swam through the flooded lower levels of the mining station, her breathing apparatus allowing her to stay underwater for hours. Above her, Tony Martinez and his team created noise and confusion while she planted explosives in the facility's critical support structures. The Zephyrians had built their underwater base assuming no human could approach it undetected. They had not considered that some humans might be as comfortable in water as on land, or that retired naval officers might know things about underwater warfare that active duty personnel were never taught. Lisa checked her timer. Jake's team should be starting their infiltration now. Rick Johnson would begin his sniper attacks in exactly 7 minutes. Amy Chen would start her aerial assault 12 minutes after that. The retired humans were conducting a symphony of destruction across multiple locations, making the enemy believe they faced an army instead of a few dozen specialists. On the command ship, Jake heard the explosions from the mining station through the hull. The vibrations told him that Lisa's charges had found their targets. Now it was his turn. He moved through the ship's corridors with silent steps, following memorized blueprints stolen from Zephyrian databases. His destination was the main computer, core, where he would plant a virus designed by programmers who had been retired for being too creative with computer security. Frank Stone sat in his mobile command center, watching data streams from across the solar system. His job was to coordinate attacks that appeared random, but were actually part of a larger strategy designed to break Zephyrian morale and command structure. Report from Team 7, his communications officer announced. Rick Johnson has eliminated 3 enemy scouts from long range. No return fire detected. Frank smiled grimly. Rick had always been the best sniper in the military, but his methods had made his superiors nervous. In regular service, he followed rules about engagement distances and target verification. Now he simply killed enemy personnel whenever he had a clear shot. Team 12 reports successful infiltration of the enemy supply depot on Vesta. Came another update. Danny Clark says he can destroy their ammunition reserves, but the explosion will be visible from Earth. Authorized, Frank replied without hesitation. In peacetime, such an explosion would have required environmental impact studies and political approval. Now it was just another tool in humanity's arsenal. Admiral Kexavon stood in his command chamber, staring at reports that defied all logic. His superior technology was useless against enemies he could not find. His experienced crews were being outfought by humans who should not exist. Admiral? Veltar approached hesitantly. Our intelligence analysis was clearly flawed. These are not the retired soldiers we studied. Explain, Kexavon demanded. Sir, we assumed that human military retirement meant removing old warriors from service. But these attackers display capabilities that suggest the opposite. They fight without the restrictions we observed in human regular forces. Veltar activated a holographic display showing attack patterns. They use weapons that violate human military regulations. They employ tactics that human military doctrine prohibits. They show no concern for rules that limit their other forces. The Admiral studied the data with growing unease. Are you suggesting that human retirement actually means something else? Sir, I believe we misunderstood the entire concept. These are not discarded soldiers. They are specialists who were removed from regular service because they were too dangerous to operate under normal military constraints. The implications were terrifying. If Veltar was correct, then Earth had not weakened itself by retiring experienced warriors. Instead, it had created a shadow military force that operated without rules, oversight, or limitations. Amy Chen flew her stolen Zephyrian fighter through the asteroid belt, using the rocks as cover while she hunted enemy patrols. Her plane bore no markings and followed no flight plans. To the aliens, she was just another piece of debris drifting between the asteroids until she opened fire at point-blank range. She had learned to fly in the Air Force, but they had retired her for being too aggressive in combat situations. Now that aggression was exactly what humanity needed. She attacked without warning, showed no mercy to disabled enemies, and disappeared into the asteroid field before reinforcements could arrive. Rick Johnson lay motionless on the surface of a small moon, his rifle trained on a Zephyrian communication relay 2 kilometers away. He had been in position for 18 hours, waiting for the perfect shot. His targets did not know he existed until they died. In regular military service, Rick had been required to identify targets, confirm hostile intent, and follow engagement protocols. Now he simply killed any alien he could see. The moral complications that had troubled military lawyers meant nothing when humanity faced extinction. Tony Martinez walked through the ruins of his bakery, now converted into a bomb-making facility. His neighbors had been evacuated, but they would never know that their friendly baker had spent the last week creating explosives powerful enough to destroy starships. The basement that once held flour and sugar now contained chemical compounds that could level city blocks. Tony mixed his deadly recipes with the same careful attention he had once given to bread and pastries, but these creations were designed to kill rather than nourish. Commander Veltar received reports of another successful human attack. This time, an entire Zephyrian squadron had been destroyed by enemies who had somehow infiltrated their secure formation. The attackers had used the aliens' own ships against them, turning their technology into weapons they could not defend against. Sir, his aide reported, We have lost contact with Assault Group 3. Their last transmission indicated they were under attack by human forces, but our scanners show no human vessels in that sector. Veltar realized the horrible truth. The Aidai humans were not just fighting from hidden bases or distant positions. They were inside Zephyrian ships, walking among alien crews, and striking from within the formations themselves. "Admiral," he called urgently, "we have a critical situation. The humans have infiltrated our fleet." But when he turned to report to Kexavan, the Admiral's chair was empty. A human figure emerged from the shadows behind the command console, holding a weapon that made no sound but left the Admiral's body motionless on the deck. Jake Morrison looked at Veltar with cold eyes. "Commander, you have exactly one choice. Order your fleet to retreat, or join your Admiral." The Zephyrian commander stared at the human who had somehow penetrated the most secure ship in the fleet. This was not the broken, retired soldier their intelligence had described. This was something else entirely, something that should have terrified them from the beginning. Outside the ship, other human teams continued their relentless assault. The hunters had become the hunted, and the Zephyrians were learning what it meant to face Earth's apex predators unleashed from all constraints. Commander Veltar's hands shook as he activated the emergency transmission system. Around him, the bridge of what had once been the flagship of the Zephyrian invasion fleet was dark and silent. Half his crew was dead. The other half had surrendered to humans who appeared and disappeared like ghosts. Jake Morrison stood beside the communication console, his weapon trained on the alien commander. Blood stained his civilian clothes, but his eyes remained calm and focused. He looked like a grandfather who might read bedtime stories to children. "Except for the bodies scattered around the bridge, send the message," Jake said quietly. Veltar activated the fleet-wide communication channel. His voice cracked as he spoke. "All Zephyrian forces, this is Commander Veltar with emergency bulletin. Retreat immediately." Repeat. All forces retreat to jump coordinates and prepare for immediate withdrawal from this system. Across the solar system, the scattered remains of the invasion fleet received the order with confusion and relief. For 2 weeks, they had been hunted by enemies they could not see, understand, or defeat. Powerful ships had been destroyed by attackers who seemed to materialize from empty space. Secure bases had been infiltrated by humans who should not have been able to reach them. Jake activated his own communication system. "All teams, this is Sierra 1. Enemy is withdrawing. Continue operations until they clear the system perimeter." The responses came back quickly. Lisa Park reported the complete destruction of the Europa mining facility. Tony Martinez had eliminated the Vesta supply depot with an explosion that lit up half the asteroid belt. Amy Chen was pursuing fleeing enemy fighters through the outer planets. Rick Johnson was picking off stragglers from impossible distances. On Earth, Director Sam Powell watched the tactical displays with grim satisfaction. Red indicators showing enemy positions were disappearing one by one as Zephyrian forces fled toward the edge of the solar system. The invasion that had seemed unstoppable 2 weeks ago was collapsing into complete rout. "Sir," his aide reported, "we're receiving surrender requests from isolated enemy units. They're asking for mercy under galactic warfare conventions." Sam's expression was cold. "Remind them that they came here to commit genocide. They get the same mercy they plan to show our children." The aide hesitated. "Sir, some of our retired personnel are requesting permission to accept surrenders." "Denied. No prisoners until every enemy ship leaves our system." Admiral Kexavan was dead, along with most of his senior staff. The few surviving Zephyrian commanders found themselves in command of a military disaster that would echo across the galaxy for generations. They had come to conquer a weak species, and instead encountered something that defied all understanding. Commander Veltar transmitted one final message before Jake Morrison allowed him to leave. It was not sent to the Zephyrian High Command or military headquarters. Instead, it went out on emergency frequencies that reached every spacefaring species in the local galactic region. "Warning to all civilizations." Veltar's voice carried desperation and terror. "Do not attack the human homeworld. Do not trust intelligence reports about human military weakness. The species called humanity does not retire their warriors. They unleash them. The message continued as Veltar struggled to explain what his people had encountered. Human military retirement is not the removal of soldiers from service. It is the removal of restrictions that make them controllable. We believed we were fighting children with rules. Instead, we faced apex predators without chains. Veltar described attacks that came from nowhere, enemies who struck without warning and showed no mercy, humans who used their own technology against them with impossible skill. They do not follow the warfare conventions of civilized species. They do not limit their methods to preserve enemy lives. When threatened with extinction, humans become something that should not exist in a rational universe. The transmission ended with words that would be remembered across the galaxy. We came to conquer farmers and found ourselves hunting demons. Stay away from Earth. The humans are not what they pretend to be. 3 days later, the last Zephyrian ship jumped out of the solar system. They left behind empty bases, destroyed equipment, and the bodies of comrades who had learned too late what humanity was capable of when pushed to the edge. Jake Morrison sat on his porch in Montana, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of red and gold. His fishing rod leaned against the cabin wall, but he was not thinking about fish. The secure phone in his pocket had been silent for 24 hours, which meant the immediate threat was over. Lisa Park stood in her art studio in Oregon, cleaning paintbrushes that had not been used for weeks. The half-finished sunflower painting still sat on her easel, but her hands remembered other work now. Work that would never appear in any official record but had saved humanity from extinction. Frank Stone read bedtime stories to his granddaughter, Emma, just as he had promised. She curled up under her blankets and smiled sleepily as he finished the tale about brave knights and defeated dragons. "Grandpa," she whispered, "you were gone for a long time. I missed you." Frank kissed her forehead, gently. "I had to help some friends with a problem, sweetheart, but I'm back now." She yawned and closed her eyes. "Did you win?" "Yes, Emma. We won." Tony Martinez reopened his bakery on a Tuesday morning. His regular customers were happy to see him back, though none of them asked where he had been. The basement, that had held enough explosives to level a city block, now contained only flour and sugar again. Amy Chen returned to her 4th grade classroom with the same warm smile her students remembered. She read them stories about courage and protecting the people you love, and they never suspected that their teacher had been living those stories among the stars. Rick Johnson unlocked the gates to his national park and welcomed visitors back to the hiking trails. Tourists came to see beautiful landscapes and never knew that their friendly park ranger had been hunting alien invaders from mountaintops across the solar system. Across Earth, hundreds of retired veterans returned to their quiet civilian lives. They went back to fishing and painting, teaching children and baking bread, tending gardens and reading stories to grandchildren. To their neighbors, they were just ordinary people living peaceful retirements. But the galaxy now knew the truth. Earth's most dangerous individuals had not been discarded or weakened by retirement. They had been released from the constraints that made them controllable during peacetime. When humanity faced extinction, those constraints had been lifted completely. Intelligence. Services across known space began revising their assessments of human military capability. The species that seemed so concerned with rules and civilian safety had revealed another side entirely. A side that followed no rules except survival, and showed no mercy to those who threatened their young. New protocols were established. Trade. Negotiations with humans were conducted with unusual care. Border disputes involving human colonies were resolved quickly and in humanity's favor. No one wanted to discover what else humans might be hiding behind their civilized facades. On Earth, a new generation of military personnel received their training. They learned the same rules of engagement and moral constraints that had always governed human warfare. But they also learned about Protocol 7 and the people who lived quiet lives in small towns across the planet. Young Lieutenant Bobby Torres, now promoted after surviving the initial alien attacks, asked his instructor about the retired veterans during a classified briefing. "Sir, what happens if someone threatens Earth again?" The instructor, A colonel who had watched the invasion collapse in real time chose his words carefully. "Son, let's hope no one is ever that stupid again." The retirement ceremony for Sergeant Helen Ross took place on a sunny Thursday in May. She had served with distinction for 20 years and earned the respect of everyone in her unit. As the flag was folded and presented to her, she smiled and thanked her commanders for the honor of serving her country. Helen drove away from the base that afternoon, heading toward a small house in Vermont where she planned to grow vegetables and read books. Her neighbors would find her friendly and helpful, always ready to lend a hand or offer advice. But deep in classified files, Helen's name appeared on a very different list. A list of people who could be contacted when fishing season ended and the farm was burning. A list of humans who had been retired not because they were no longer useful, but because they were too dangerous for peacetime service. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity's warriors did not grow weak in retirement. They simply removed their uniforms and waited for the day when their true skills might be needed again. That day had come and gone, and the universe was a quieter place because of it.